I'm Carly Bennett, 35, and literally last weekend, my role as the family's emotional anchor? It completely shattered. The sacred memory of my daughter Rosie, the communion dress I'd clung to since her death 6 months ago, was desecrated at our so-called joyful family party. My sister Melanie, all of 26 and ever the spotlight thief, decided to wear Rosie's dress like it was some thrift store find. I begged her to take it off, to respect what it meant to me. But my family, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, laughed it off, telling me to lighten up. When I pushed back, voice cracking, the room went dead silent. "You're being dramatic, Carly," Melanie snapped, twirling in the dress like it was hers to claim. Everyone stared, some smirking, others rolling their eyes. But here's the truth. Their cruelty didn't just hurt, it set something ablaze inside me. I'm not just grieving anymore, I'm done playing their game. I'm about to take back what's mine and protect Rosie's memory, no matter the cost. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for a story of standing up to betrayal. You won't believe what I do once I make my decision. 6 months ago, I lost Rosie, my 7-year-old light, to leukemia. Her laughter still echoes in my dreams, her tiny hand in mine as we picked out that communion dress. White lace, delicate as her spirit. I'd kept it in a box under my bed, a piece of her I could still touch. That party was supposed to be a family barbecue, a chance to come together, Mom said, to help me move on. I didn't want to go, but guilt dragged me there, the weight of being the good daughter who always showed up. Pulling into the driveway of my parents' sprawling suburban house, I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, trying to brace myself. The smell of grilled burgers hit me as I stepped out, laughter spilling from the backyard. I adjusted my cardigan, took a deep breath, and walked toward the noise, hoping for a moment of warmth. Then I saw her, Melanie, strutting across the lawn, Rosie's dress catching the sunlight. My heart stopped. The lace, too short on her, stretched tight across her chest, the hem barely reaching her thighs. She was laughing, tossing her hair, a wine glass in one hand. My stomach churned as I pushed through cousins and aunts, my sandals sinking into the grass. "Melanie," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Why are you wearing that?" She turned, her smile smug, and shrugged. "Found it in your closet last week. It's cute, right?" My closet. She'd been in my house rifling through my things. I felt my face flush, my hands trembling. "It's Rosie's communion dress," I said, quieter now, hoping she'd hear the weight. She rolled her eyes. "God, Carly, it's just a dress." The backyard went blurry. I scanned the faces, Mom flipping burgers, Dad chatting with Uncle Ray, my cousins snapping photos. No one cared. I stepped closer to Melanie, my voice shaking. "Take it off, please." She laughed, a sharp cutting sound, and sipped her wine. "You're so extra, it's not like she's coming back for it." The words landed like a slap. I froze, my chest tight as heads turned. Mom looked over, frowning, but said nothing. Dad shook his head, muttering, "Here we go again." My Aunt Linda chimed in. "Carly, don't make a scene." A scene, as if my grief was just a performance. I stood there, the summer heat pressing against me, my throat burning. Melanie twirled again, the dress catching on her hip, and I saw a small tear in the lace, Rosie's lace. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. I wanted to scream, to rip the dress off her myself, but every eye was on me, judging, waiting for me to break. I'd spent years holding this family together, swallowing their slights, showing up for every birthday, every crisis while they dismissed my pain. Rosie's death had cracked me open, and now Melanie was parading her memory like a costume. I turned away, my breath shallow, and walked toward the house, their laughter trailing behind me. Inside, I leaned against the kitchen counter, the cool granite grounding me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my best friend Jen. "You okay at the circus?" I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at the fridge, covered in photos. Melanie's college graduation, her new car, her engagement party. Not one of Rosie, not one of me. The spark Melanie's stunt had lit was growing, a quiet rage I hadn't felt before. I wasn't just going to take this, I was done begging for respect. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady now, and typed a number I hadn't called in months. My therapist. As it rang, I knew this was the start of something bigger. They'd crossed a line, and I was ready to draw mine. The kitchen's fluorescent light buzzed above me as I gripped my phone, waiting for my therapist's voicemail to beep. My family's laughter still drifted in from the backyard, a cruel reminder of their indifference to Melanie's stunt with Rosie's dress. As I stood there, the weight of years pressed down. Years of being the invisible one, the sister who overreacted, while Melanie's every move was met with applause. My mind slipped back to moments that had carved this resentment into me, each one a small cut that bled into today. I was 15, sitting at the dining room table, my hands smudged with paint from the art project I'd poured my heart into. It was a portrait of our family, vibrant and messy. My first real attempt at something big. I'd spent weeks on it, staying up late, my fingers cramped from holding the brush. Mom had promised to hang it in the living room. That night, Melanie, barely 6, pranced in with a glittery poster from her school play, a stick figure drawing of a princess. Mom clapped, pinned it to the fridge, and gushed about Melanie's natural talent. My painting? It stayed rolled up in my room, gathering dust. When I asked Mom about it, she waved me off, saying, "Carly, don't be so sensitive, it's just a picture." I swallowed the hurt, tucking the canvas under my bed where it stayed until I moved out. Then there was my high school graduation. I'd worked relentlessly, earning a scholarship to a state college, the first in our family to go. I stood in my cap and gown, clutching my diploma, my smile wide as I searched the crowd for Mom and Dad. They were late, stuck at Melanie's dance recital, where she'd twirled as a backup snowflake. When they finally arrived, Mom hugged me quickly, saying, "We're so proud, Carly," before pulling out her phone to show me photos of Melanie's costume. Dad nodded, distracted, muttering about traffic. At the dinner afterward, Melanie spilled soda on my gown, giggling, and Mom just laughed, saying, "Oh, she's such a character." I dabbed at the stain in the bathroom, alone, telling myself it didn't matter. College was no different. I majored in social work, driven by a need to help kids like the ones I'd seen struggling in our neighborhood. I interned at a youth center, staying late to mentor teens, my heart full despite the exhaustion. When I'd call home, bubbling with stories about a kid I'd helped, Mom would cut me off. "That's nice, Carly, but did you hear Melanie got the lead in her college play?" Melanie's theater minor, her Instagram posts, her vibrant energy, those were the family's pride. My degree, my quiet impact? Barely a footnote. At my graduation, Dad clapped, but his eyes were on his watch, eager to get to Melanie's performance that night. Even after Rosie was born, the pattern held. I'd bring her to family dinners, her tiny hands clutching my fingers, her giggles lighting up the room. I'd share how she'd started reading at 4, how she'd draw flowers for strangers at the park. Mom would smile faintly, then turn to Melanie's latest dating drama, or her new job as a social media coordinator. When Rosie got sick, I thought they'd finally see us. I'd sit by her hospital bed, holding her hand, whispering stories to keep her smiling. I'd call Mom, sobbing, begging for support. She'd say, "We're praying for her," then pivot to Melanie's stressful breakup. When Rosie died, they came to the funeral, heads bowed, but a week later, Mom texted me about Melanie's new apartment, as if my world hadn't collapsed. Now, standing in the kitchen, the memories piled up like stones in my chest. My hands shook as I left a voicemail for my therapist. "It's Carly, I need to talk, they've gone too far." I hung up, my eyes stinging. Outside, Melanie's voice carried, bragging about her vintage find, Rosie's dress. I pressed my palms against the counter, the granite cold under my skin. I'd spent my life shrinking, making space for their egos, their dismissals. I'd been the one to call on birthdays, to mediate fights, to show up when Dad had his surgery or Mom needed a ride. And for what? To watch them parade my daughter's memory like a prop? I glanced at the fridge again, at the photos celebrating Melanie's life. My pain, my love for Rosie had never mattered to them. My fingers tightened around my phone, the spark from earlier, flaring brighter. This wasn't just about the dress. It was about every moment they'd erased me. Every time they'd chosen Melanie's shine over my substance. I wasn't invisible anymore. I slipped my phone into my pocket and stepped toward the door, my jaw set. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't staying silent. The kitchen door swung shut behind me, muffling the backyard's chatter, but Melanie's voice, bragging about her dress, still pierced through. My fingers brushed the phone in my pocket, the voicemail to my therapist already sent, but the fire in my chest burned hotter. Rosie's communion dress wasn't just fabric, it was her. I could still see her in it, twirling in our living room, her gap-toothed smile wide as she hugged me, whispering, "Mama, I'm an angel." That dress held her light, her courage through chemo, her tiny hands clutching it as she dreamed of her special day. Keeping it safe was my way of keeping her close, a secret sanctuary my family could never touch. Until now. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, my hands trembling as I pictured the moment I'd first tucked the dress away. It was a month after Rosie's funeral, when the house felt like a tomb, every corner echoing her absence. I'd sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by her things, crayon drawings, her favorite stuffed bunny, the tiny sneakers she'd never outgrow. The dress was in a plastic garment bag, pristine, untouched since her communion. I'd lifted it out, the lace soft under my fingers, and pressed it to my face, inhaling, hoping for a trace of her strawberry shampoo. There was nothing, just the faint scent of laundry soap, but holding it felt like holding her. I'd cried until my throat was raw, then folded it carefully, placing it in a locked box under my bed. It was my private ritual, my way to grieve without their judgment. I'd never told my family about it. They wouldn't understand. When I tried sharing my grief, how I'd wake up reaching for Rosie, how I'd saved her voicemails just to hear her giggle, they'd change the subject. Mom once said, "You need to move forward, Carly," while Dad nodded, uncomfortable with my tears. Melanie was the worst, texting me inspirational quotes about letting go while posting selfies at clubs. So I kept the dress hidden, a sacred piece of Rosie they couldn't taint. I'd check on it weekly, unlocking the box, running my fingers over the lace, whispering her name. It was my anchor, proof she'd existed, proof I'd been a good mom. How had Melanie found it? Last week she'd come over unannounced, claiming she just wanted to check on me. I was at work, but I'd given her a spare key years ago for emergencies. She must have gone through my room, opened the box. How? I'd never shared the combination. My stomach twisted as I realized she'd probably guessed it. Rosie's birthday. The violation hit me like a wave, my breath catching. She hadn't just taken the dress, she'd invaded my grief, turned it into a prop for her ego. I pictured her rummaging through my things, smirking as she pulled the dress out, not caring what it meant. I stood, pacing the kitchen, my sandals clicking on the tile. The memory of Rosie in that dress flooded back, her communion day just before her diagnosis. She'd been so proud, her hair in soft curls, her eyes bright as she walked down the church aisle. I'd knelt beside her, adjusting the hem, whispering, "You're my miracle." She'd giggled, hugging me tight. That moment was stitched into every thread of that dress. Now Melanie was out there, cheapening it, tearing it, while my family laughed. My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms, the pain grounding me. I wanted to storm outside, rip the dress off her, but I knew they'd twist it, make me the villain, the hysterical one. Instead, I pulled out my phone again, my fingers steady despite the rage. I opened my notes app and started typing. Melanie took Rosie's dress, wore it to the party. They laughed. I added the date, the time, every detail I could remember. Mom's frown, Dad's muttering, Linda's, "Don't make a scene." My therapist had taught me to document when things felt overwhelming. It helped me process. But this wasn't just processing. It was evidence of their disregard, their cruelty. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but writing it down felt like reclaiming control. I glanced at the clock, 6:47 p.m. The party was still going, but I couldn't go back out there, not yet. I needed a plan. My eyes fell on a photo on the counter. Rosie, smiling, holding a daisy. My heart ached, but it also steeled me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting her memory from people who'd never valued her, or me. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, my resolve hardening. They thought they could dismiss me, but they just made a mistake. I wasn't the Carly they could ignore anymore. The kitchen clock ticked past 6:50 p.m., each second pulling me closer to facing the backyard again. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, the notes I'd typed about Melanie's stunt burning in my mind. Rosie's dress, her sacred memory, was out there, mocked, while my family partied like nothing was wrong. I leaned against the counter, my fingers tracing the edge of Rosie's photo, her daisy smile steadying me. I had to go back out, but the thought of their smirks, their dismissal, made my stomach knot. Today was supposed to be a family barbecue, a chance to heal, but I knew better. These gatherings always followed the same script. Melanie shining, me fading into the background. I braced myself for their predictable insensitivity, my hands already clenching. I glanced out the window. The sun was dipping, casting long shadows across the lawn where cousins milled around, paper plates in hand. Melanie was still prancing, Rosie's dress catching the light, a tear in the lace glinting like a wound. Mom was at the grill, flipping burgers, her smile tight as she chatted with Aunt Linda. Dad stood by the cooler, laughing with Uncle Ray, oblivious. I knew what awaited me out there. The same subtle digs, the same "Carly, don't overreact" I'd heard my whole life. My cardigan felt too thin, like it couldn't shield me from their judgment. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, my reflection in the window showing tired eyes, a face worn from 6 months of grief. I thought back to last year's barbecue, when Rosie was still here. She'd run across the lawn, chasing bubbles, her laughter brighter than the summer sun. I'd watched her, my heart full, thinking maybe this family could be enough for her. But even then, Melanie had stolen the spotlight, announcing her big promotion, while Mom clapped like she'd won an Oscar. When I mentioned Rosie's reading milestone, Dad nodded absently, already turning to Melanie's story. I'd swallowed it, like always, for Rosie's sake. Now with her gone, there was no reason to play nice. Yet, I couldn't just storm out. Not yet. I needed to see how far they'd go, to confirm what I already suspected. They'd never change. I took a deep breath, the smell of charred meat seeping through the screen door. My fingers brushed the doorknob, hesitating. I could stay inside, hide, but that felt like letting them win. Instead, I straightened, my jaw tight. I'd go out, face them, but not as the Carly they expected, the one who'd nod and take it. I pushed the door open, the warm air hitting me like a wall. The noise swelled, laughter, clinking glasses, Melanie's voice rising above it all. I stepped onto the grass, my sandals sinking slightly, and scanned the crowd. Eyes flicked toward me, then away, like I was an inconvenience. "Carly!" Aunt Linda called, her tone syrupy, waving me over to a picnic table. I walked slowly, my arms crossed, feeling the weight of every glance. Linda patted the bench beside her, her perfume sharp. "You okay, hon? You looked upset earlier." Her concern felt hollow, her eyes darting to Melanie, who was posing for a selfie with our cousin Jake. I forced a smile, sitting, my hands folded tight in my lap. "I'm fine," I said, my voice flat. Linda raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Instead, she launched into a story about her new car, her hands gesturing wildly, rings glinting. I nodded, my eyes on Melanie, who caught my stare and smirked, adjusting the dress's strap. Mom called everyone to eat, her voice cheerful, as if nothing had happened. I stayed seated, watching as plates were filled, burgers stacked with lettuce and ketchup. Dad sat across from me, his mouth full, talking about his golf game. "Carly, you should try it," he said, not looking at me. "Might cheer you up, cheer me up." Like my grief was a mood swing. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into the wood. Melanie slid into the seat beside Dad, the dress bunched up, a ketchup stain now smudging the lace. My breath caught, but I kept my face neutral, my heart pounding. "Mel, you look so cute in that," Mom said, passing her a plate. Melanie grinned, tossing her hair. "Thanks, Mom, it's so retro." Retro. My vision blurred, but I blinked it away, my fingers twitching. I wanted to scream, to tell them what the dress meant, but I knew they'd brush it off. Instead, I watched, cataloging every word, every glance, adding them to the list in my head. This wasn't just a party, it was a reckoning. I'd play their game for now, but I was done being their doormat. The spark from the kitchen was aflame now, and I'd let it burn. The backyard buzzed with chatter, plates clattering as my family dug into burgers and potato salad, the late afternoon sun casting a golden haze. I sat at the picnic table, my hands knotted in my lap, the wood rough under my fingertips. Melanie's laughter cut through the noise, sharp and careless, as she posed for another photo, Rosie's dress clinging to her like a mockery. The ketchup stain on the lace glared at me, a fresh wound. I'd come back outside to face them, to see how far their cruelty went, but the sight of that dress, my daughter's sacred memory, paraded like a party favor, made my chest tighten. Their condescending questions and backhanded compliments were already starting, and I braced myself for the gauntlet. Mom slid a plate toward me, a burger piled high with toppings. "Eat something, Carly," she said, her tone clipped, like I was a child refusing vegetables. I stared at the plate, my stomach churning, and pushed it away slightly. "Not hungry," I muttered. She sighed. loud enough for Aunt Linda to glance over, her eyebrows raised. "You've got to take care of yourself," Mom said, her voice dripping with that familiar mix of pity and impatience. "Rosie wouldn't want you moping." The words landed like a punch. I bit my lip, hard, tasting blood, and kept my eyes on the table, refusing to let her see the tears prickling. Uncle Ray, wiping ketchup off his chin, leaned in from across the table. "So Carly still doing that social work thing?" His tone was casual, but the smirk said it all, like my career was a hobby. "Yeah," I said, my voice low, "still helping kids." He nodded, already turning to Dad. "Melanie's killing it with her new marketing gig, huh? Got a corner office already." Melanie beamed, twirling a strand of hair, the dress shifting to reveal another tear in the lace. My fingers dug into my palms, nails biting skin. "It's just freelance," she said, faux humble, "but I'm basically running the show." Everyone chuckled, impressed, while my work, years of mentoring at-risk kids, was reduced to a footnote. Cousin Jake, snapping a photo of his beer, chimed in. "Carly, you should get on Instagram. Mel's got, 10,000 followers?" Melanie grinned, holding up her phone. 12, actually. I forced a tight smile, my throat burning. "Not my thing," I said, but Jake was already scrolling through Melanie's feed, showing Linda a post of her in Rosie's dress, captioned, "Vintage Vibes." My heart lurched. I wanted to snatch the phone, delete the photo, but I stayed still, my hands trembling under the table. Linda cooed, "You look stunning, Mel. Where'd you get that dress?" Melanie shrugged, glancing at me with a smirk. "Just something I found." The air felt thick, suffocating. I scanned the faces around me, Mom nodding at Melanie's story, Dad laughing at Ray's golf joke, cousins engrossed in their phones. No one saw me. No one saw Rosie in that dress, her tiny frame glowing in it, her hands clutching mine during her communion. They saw a cute outfit, a prop for Melanie's ego. I shifted in my seat, the bench creaking, and caught Dad's eye. "You okay, Carly?" he asked, but his tone was more annoyed than concerned, like my silence was ruining the vibe. "Fine," I lied, my voice barely audible. He nodded, turning back to Ray. Dismissing me, Aunt Linda reached over, patting my hand like I was a fragile doll. "You know, hon, you should try yoga. It really helped my friend after her divorce." Her divorce. As if losing Rosie was the same as a breakup. I pulled my hand back, my skin crawling. "I'm good," I said, sharper than I meant. Linda's smile faltered, but she recovered, turning to Melanie. "Mel, you should teach Carly how to loosen up. You're always so full of life." Melanie laughed, tossing her hair, the dress catching the light. "Oh, Carly's just Carly," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. The table chuckled, a low hum of agreement, and I felt my face burn. I stared at my untouched plate, the burger's grease pooling on the bun. Their words, their laughter pressed against me, each one a needle in my skin. I'd known they'd be insensitive, but this, their casual erasure of Rosie, their celebration of Melanie's theft, was worse. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Jen again, but I didn't check it. Instead, I locked eyes with the ketchup stain on the dress, my resolve hardening. This wasn't just a bad day, it was a breaking point. I wasn't going to let them rewrite Rosie's memory. Not anymore. The backyard's golden light faded as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the picnic tables. The air buzzed with my family's chatter, forks scraping plates, Melanie's laugh piercing the hum, but it all felt distant, like I was underwater. My eyes stayed glued to the ketchup stain on Rosie's dress, now a dark smear across the lace as Melanie leaned back in her chair, gesturing wildly about her big plans for a new influencer deal. My pleas for her to take it off had been ignored, laughed off, and now my family's dismissal was a blade twisting deeper. I sat rigid, my hands gripping the bench, nails digging into the wood, as their mockery of my grief unfolded. I tried one last time, just minutes ago, to make them understand. Standing by the grill, I'd caught Mom's arm as she flipped a burger, my voice low but firm. "Mom, that dress, it's Rosie's communion dress. It's all I have left of her. Please, tell Melanie to give it back." My throat tightened, my eyes burning as I waited for her to get it. She'd sighed, brushing my hand off, her spatula hovering midair. "Carly, it's just a dress. Melanie didn't mean anything by it. Don't turn this into a drama." Her words hit like a slap, her frown saying I was the problem, not Melanie's theft. I'd stood there, frozen, as she turned back to the grill, humming like nothing happened. I'd tried Dad next, catching him by the cooler as he grabbed another beer. Dad, please, I'd said, my voice shaking. That dress is Rosie's. It's sacred to me. He'd barely looked up, popping the can open with a hiss. Come on, Carly, let it go. You're making everyone uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. My daughter's memory was being paraded, torn, stained, and I was the one making them uncomfortable. I'd stepped back, my chest heaving as he walked away, rejoining Uncle Ray's golf talk like I hadn't spoken. Now, back at the table, their dismissal sank in fully. Melanie was holding court, her phone propped up for a video, the dress bunched at her waist. Guys, this vintage look is giving, right? She said, pouting for the camera. Cousin Jake nodded, filming her, while Aunt Linda clapped like it was a runway show. You're a star, Mel, she said. I felt my jaw clench, my teeth grinding. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stood my chair scraping the grass and every head turned. Melanie, I said, my voice louder than I'd planned, take off Rosie's dress now. The table went quiet, forks pausing midair. Melanie's smile froze, then twisted into a smirk. Wow, Carly, chill, it's just fabric. Fabric. My hands shook, but I kept my voice steady. It's not just fabric, it's my daughter's communion dress. You had no right to take it. My eyes darted to Mom, Dad, anyone begging for backup. Mom shifted in her seat, her lips pursed. Carly, stop, she said, her tone sharp. You're ruining the party. Dad shook his head, muttering, always something with her. Linda chimed in, her voice syrupy. Honey, you're blowing this out of proportion. It's a dress. My vision blurred, tears threatening, but I blinked them back. It's not just a dress, I said, my voice cracking. It's Rosie. You're all acting like she didn't matter. Melanie rolled her eyes, crossing her arms, the lace stretching dangerously. God, Carly, you're so obsessed with her. She's gone. Move on. The words sliced through me, sharper than anything yet. The backyard spun, my breath shallow. I looked around, cousins avoiding my gaze, Uncle Ray staring at his plate, Mom's frown deepening. No one spoke up, no one cared. I sank back into my chair, my legs weak, my hands trembling in my lap. Their silence was louder than their words, confirming what I'd always feared. Rosie's memory, my pain, meant nothing to them. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling, and added to my notes. 6:58 p.m., Melanie said. She's gone, move on. Mom and Dad defended her. No one stopped it. The act of typing grounded me, a lifeline in the chaos. I glanced at Melanie, still smirking, the dress now creased and stained. This wasn't just a moment, it was the end of something. I wasn't begging anymore. I was done. The backyard's chatter resumed, a low hum of forks clinking and Melanie's voice rising again, but it was white noise to me. I sat frozen at the picnic table, my phone clutched in my lap, the words I'd typed. Melanie said, she's gone, move on. Searing into my mind. The ketchup-stained lace of Rosie's dress glinted in the fading sunlight as Melanie laughed, oblivious, her selfie video now looping on her phone for everyone to admire. My family's dismissal, their mockery of my pleas, had cracked something fundamental inside me. This wasn't just another slight, it was the culmination of years of disregard, a betrayal so callous it demanded action. My hands stopped trembling, replaced by a cold, steady resolve. This was my breaking point. I stood slowly, my chair barely scraping the grass, unnoticed by the others. My eyes scanned the table. Mom fussing over the potato salad, Dad nodding at Uncle Ray's story, cousins scrolling their phones. They'd made it clear, Rosie's memory was disposable to them, and so was I. My fingers tightened around my phone, the notes app still open, a growing record of their cruelty. I stepped away from the table, my sandals silent on the lawn, and moved toward the edge of the yard, where the oak tree's shadow offered a sliver of privacy. My heart pounded, not with panic, but with clarity. I couldn't stay here, couldn't keep pretending this family was mine. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts, scrolling past family names, Mom, Dad, Melanie, until I found Jen's number. My best friend since college, Jen had been my rock through Rosie's illness, the only one who'd sat with me in the hospital, held my hand when the machines flatlined. She'd texted earlier, checking on me, and now I needed her voice. I hit call, pressing the phone to my ear, my back to the party. She answered on the second ring. Carly? You okay? Her concern was immediate, warm, the opposite of the coldness behind me. They took Rosie's dress, I said, my voice low, steady. Melanie's wearing it, Jen. They're laughing about it. I heard her sharp intake of breath. What? Carly, that's disgusting. How could she? I closed my eyes, picturing Jen's face, her fierce loyalty. I begged them to stop. Mom told me I'm ruining the party. Melanie said I'm obsessed with Rosie, to move on. My voice cracked on the last words, but I swallowed the tears. Jen's silence was heavy, then she said, "Carly, you don't deserve this. What do you need?" I glanced back at the table, Melanie's smirk catching the light. "I need to end this," I said. "I'm done with them." Jen didn't hesitate. "Come to my place, now, you don't have to stay there." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "I will, but first I need to do something." I hung up, my mind racing. The dress wasn't coming back. Not tonight, maybe not ever. But this wasn't about the dress anymore, it was about protecting what remained of Rosie, about refusing to let them erase her. I opened my notes again, typing 7:04 p.m. Decided to leave. They don't get to hurt me anymore. Each word felt like a brick in a wall I was building, one that would keep them out. I looked toward the house, the kitchen door a beacon. I'd leave, but not quietly. I needed to make it clear this was the end. My fingers hovered over my contacts again, landing on my therapist's number. I'd already left a voicemail, but this couldn't wait. I typed a text. "It's Carly. Family crossed a line, need an urgent session tomorrow." I hit send, then scrolled to another name, my lawyer Sarah, who'd helped with Rosie's medical paperwork. I didn't know what I'd ask her yet. Restraining order, maybe, but I needed options. I texted, "Need to talk ASAP about family issues, call me tomorrow." My hands were steady now, each action a step toward freedom. I turned back to the party, my family's faces blurred in the dusk. They hadn't noticed me slip away, hadn't cared. That was their mistake. I wasn't just grieving Carly anymore. I was Carly who'd had enough. I'd protect Rosie's memory, even if it meant cutting them out entirely. The spark from the kitchen was now ablaze, and I was ready to let it consume everything tying me to them. The oak tree's shadow stretched long across the grass, shielding me from the backyard's fading light as my family's laughter echoed, oblivious to my absence. My phone buzzed with a confirmation from my therapist. Session booked, 10 a.m. tomorrow, and another from Sarah, my lawyer, promising a call. My notes app glowed with the record of their cruelty. Melanie's smirk, Mom's dismissal, Dad's muttered annoyance. Rosie's dress, stained and torn, was still on Melanie, her voice now pitching higher as she recounted some influencer drama to a captive audience. The realization from moments ago hardened into certainty. My family's betrayal wasn't just a moment, it was their nature. I couldn't stay silent. I had to confront their hypocrisy, make it clear I was done, and walk away on my terms. I stepped out from the tree's cover, my sandals steady on the lawn, my heart pounding but not with fear, with purpose. The picnic table was a blur of faces. Mom passing a bowl of chips, Dad nodding at Uncle Ray, Melanie gesturing wildly, the dress bunched at her hips. I stopped a few feet away, my arms crossed, and cleared my throat. "Everyone," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter like a blade, heads turned, forks paused, eyes narrowing. Melanie's smirk faltered, her phone lowering. I didn't wait for permission. "You all need to hear this," Mom sighed, setting down the bowl. "Carly, what now?" Her tone was weary, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. I ignored her, locking eyes with Melanie. "You took Rosie's communion dress," I said, my voice steady, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You went into my home, my private space, and stole something sacred. You're wearing it like it's nothing, and you all..." I swept my gaze across the table, catching Dad's frown, Linda's raised brows, Jake's averted eyes. "You laughed. You told me to move on. You mocked my daughter's memory." Melanie rolled her eyes, tossing her hair. "God, Carly, it's a dress. You're acting like I burned her pictures." A few cousins chuckled, but they stopped when I stepped closer, my hands unclenching, my voice rising. "It's not just a dress. It's Rosie. My daughter, who you barely acknowledged when she was alive. You never visited her in the hospital, Melanie. You never called when she died, and now you're wearing her memory like a costume?" My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "You all let her do it. You told me I'm dramatic, that I'm ruining your party, but you're the ones who've ruined everything." Dad shifted, his beer can creaking in his grip. "Carly, enough, you're embarrassing yourself." I turned to him, my eyes burning. "Embarrassing myself? You let this happen. You've always chosen Melanie's ego over me, over Rosie. When she was dying, you sent prayers and went to her dance recitals. When I begged for help today, you told me to let it go." I looked at Mom, her lips pursed. "And you, Mom, You said I'm making a scene, but you've never seen me, not really. Not my pain, not my work, not my daughter. The table was silent now, faces frozen. Aunt Linda opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Don't, you've all made it clear where I stand. Nowhere, so I'm done. I pointed at Melanie, my finger steady. Keep the dress, it's ruined now, like this family, but you don't get to touch Rosie's memory anymore. None of you do. Melanie's face flushed, her mouth opening, but I turned away, my heart racing, my breath shallow but strong. I walked toward the house, their silence heavy behind me. No one called after me, no one followed. I pushed through the kitchen door, the cool air hitting my face like a relief. My phone was in my hand before I even registered it, my fingers typing. 7:12 p.m. Confronted them. Told them I'm done. No one responded. I grabbed my purse from the counter, my keys jangling, and headed for the front door. My car was parked out front, a lifeline. As I stepped outside, the party's noise faded, replaced by the quiet hum of crickets. I'd said my piece, exposed their hypocrisy, and now I was free. Or at least I was starting to be. Rosie's memory was mine to protect, and I'd do it alone. The car's engine hummed as I pulled away from my parents' house, the backyard's lights fading in my rearview mirror. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, but my heart felt lighter than it had in hours. Confronting my family, calling out Melanie's theft, their laughter, their erasure of Rosie, had been like cutting a chain. I'd left them speechless, their hypocrisy laid bare, and now I was driving to Jen's apartment, a sanctuary where Rosie's memory was honored, not mocked. The contrast between my toxic family and the allies who truly saw me was stark, and tonight, I needed that warmth to ground me. Jen lived 20 minutes away, in a cozy walk-up near the city's edge, her place a haven of mismatched furniture and candlelight. I parked under a street lamp, my breath steadying as I climbed the stairs. Before I could knock, the door swung open, Jen standing there in sweatpants, her brown curls loose, her eyes searching mine. "Carly," she said, pulling me into a hug. Her arms were warm, solid, and I sank into them, the tension in my shoulders loosening. "Come in, tell me everything." She led me to her couch, a soft throw blanket draped over my lap, before I could protest. The room smelled of lavender and coffee, a far cry from the barbecue's charred meat and betrayal. I sank into the cushions, my hands still clutching my phone, the notes app open with my record of the night. Jen sat across from me, her knees tucked up, a mug of tea in her hands. "They laughed, Jen," I started, my voice low. "Melanie wore Rosie's dress, and when I begged her to stop, they told me I was dramatic." Jen's jaw tightened, her mug pausing mid-air. "That's vile," she said. "How could they?" I shook my head, my fingers tracing the phone's edge. "They've always been like this. I didn't see it so clearly until tonight." Jen leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "You don't need them, Carly. You've got us." Us meant her husband Mark, and a small circle of friends who'd become my family after Rosie's diagnosis. Mark appeared from the kitchen, a plate of cookies in hand, his quiet smile a balm. "Heard you gave 'em hell," he said, setting the plate down. I managed a small laugh, the first all night. "I tried." He nodded, sitting beside Jen. "Good. They don't deserve you." We talked for hours, the candles flickering as I poured out the night. Melanie's smirk, Mom's dismissal, Dad's muttered annoyance. Jen listened, her hand squeezing mine when my voice broke, recounting Melanie's "move on" jab. "Rosie was everything," I said, my eyes on a photo Jen kept on her shelf. Rosie at her 5th birthday, laughing in Jen's backyard, a daisy crown on her head. Jen had thrown that party, baking a cake shaped like a butterfly, because Rosie loved them. My family hadn't shown up. Melanie had a work thing, Mom and Dad forgot. But Jen had made Rosie feel like a queen. "Rosie's still with you," Jen said softly, her eyes on the photo too. "And we'll keep her memory alive, not them." Mark nodded, adding, "You're not alone, Carly. We've got your back." Their words wrapped around me like a shield, so different from my family's coldness. I thought of the hospital days, when Jen brought me coffee, sat through my tears, and helped Rosie make paper butterflies for her room. My family sent texts. Jen showed up. I pulled the throw blanket tighter, my phone resting on my lap. I opened my notes, adding 7:48 p.m. at Jen's. They see Rosie. They see me. The contrast was undeniable. My family's table, where I was invisible, versus this couch, where I was heard. Jen refilled my tea, her hand brushing mine. "Stay as long as you need," she said. I nodded, my throat tight. Here, Rosie wasn't a burden or a phase to move past. Here, I could grieve, rage, and rebuild. My family had shown who they were, but Jen and Mark showed me who I could rely on. Tonight, I'd rest. Tomorrow, I'd start building walls they couldn't cross. The morning light filtered through Jen's living room curtains, soft and warm, as I sat on her couch, a mug of coffee cooling in my hands. Last night's confrontation with my family, Melanie's smirk, Mom's dismissal, the silence that followed my exit, still pulsed in my veins, but being here, surrounded by Jen's quiet support, gave me clarity. My phone lay beside me, buzzing with a text from Sarah, my lawyer. "Can call at 11. What's going on?" My notes app was open, a growing record of the barbecue's betrayal, each entry a brick in the fortress I was building. Today, I'd take decisive steps, therapist, lawyer, locksmith, to sever ties with my family for good. This wasn't just about protecting Rosie's memory, it was about protecting myself. I sipped the coffee, its bitterness grounding me, and glanced at Jen, who was in the kitchen, humming as she scrambled eggs. Mark had left for work, but not before squeezing my shoulder and saying, "You're tougher than they'll ever know." Their belief in me, so different from my family's disregard, fueled my resolve. I'd spent years bending to their expectations, swallowing their slights, but no more. My fingers hovered over my phone, then dialed my therapist, Ellen. She answered quickly, her voice calm. "Carly, I got your message, I'm here." I paced the living room, the hardwood cool under my bare feet, and poured out the night. Melanie wearing Rosie's dress, the ketchup stain, my family's laughter. "They told me to move on," I said, my voice tight. Like Rosie was nothing. Ellen listened, her silence steady, then asked, "What do you need right now?" I stopped pacing, my eyes on Rosie's photo on Jen's shelf. "I need them gone," I said. "I can't keep letting them hurt me." Ellen's tone was firm. "Then let's set boundaries. Permanent ones. We'll work on it today at 10. I nodded, though she couldn't see, and hung up, my chest lighter. Next was Sarah. At 11 sharp, my phone rang, her crisp voice cutting through. "Carly, talk to me." I sat on the couch, pulling Jen's throw blanket over my knees, and recounted the barbecue, my voice steady but raw. "Melanie stole Rosie's communion dress. They mocked my grief. I want them out of my life, legally if needed." Sarah paused, then said, "We can explore a restraining order if they escalate, but let's start with a cease and desist letter for Melanie's theft and harassment. Document everything." I opened my notes, adding, 11:05 a.m. Sarah suggests cease and desist. "Keep documenting." "I've got a list," I said. "Every word, every action." She approved, promising to draft something by tomorrow. Then came the locksmith. I found a local number online, my fingers steady as I dialed. "I need my locks changed today," I told the guy, explaining I'd had a key misused. He could come by 3 p.m. and I gave him my address, my voice firm. Melanie still had my spare key, never again. I pictured her rummaging through my room, unlocking Rosie's box, and my stomach twisted. Changing the locks wasn't just practical, it was symbolic, a door slamming shut on their access to me. Jen emerged from the kitchen, sliding a plate of eggs and toast in front of me. "You're on a mission," she said, her smile proud. I managed a nod, picking at the toast. "I have to be," I said. "They don't get to touch Rosie's memory anymore." Jen sat beside me, her hand on my arm. "You're doing the right thing." Her support, so unwavering, made the next step clear. I opened my notes again, typing 11:15 a.m. locksmith at 3, no more access for them. Each action, therapist, lawyer, locksmith, was a stone in my fortress, a boundary they couldn't breach. By noon, I felt a shift, like I was reclaiming ground I'd lost. My family's faces, Mom's frown, Dad's indifference, Melanie's smirk, faded against the strength of my choices. I wasn't just reacting, I was building a new reality, one where Rosie's memory was safe, and I was free. Jen refilled my coffee, her presence a reminder I wasn't alone. Today I'd laid the foundation, tomorrow, I'd keep building. The afternoon sun streamed through my apartment's window, casting a warm glow on the hardwood floor where I sat, surrounded by Rosie's things. The locksmith had come and gone, leaving my door secure with a new deadbolt. The spare key Melanie once had now useless. My phone buzzed with a draft of the cease and desist letter from Sarah, my lawyer, and notes from my therapy session with Ellen, where we'd mapped out boundaries to keep my family at a distance. The barbecue, Melanie's theft of Rosie's dress, and my family's mockery were still raw, but today I wasn't dwelling on their betrayal. Instead, I was channeling my grief into something tangible. A tribute to Rosie's life, a way to honor her memory on my terms, free from their poison. I'd pulled out the box from under my bed, the one Melanie had violated. It was open now, Rosie's treasures spread carefully around me. Her crayon drawings of butterflies, a tiny bracelet she'd made at summer camp, a photo of us at the park, her laughing as I pushed her on the swing. My fingers lingered on a sketch she'd done of a flower garden, her 7-year-old handwriting spelling out, "For Mama." My chest ached, but it wasn't just pain, it was purpose. Rosie had loved creating, giving, making people smile. I couldn't bring her back, but I could make sure her light lived on, not as a stained dress mocked by my sister, but as something real, something lasting. I opened my laptop, my hands steady, and started drafting a plan. For months, I'd been mentoring kids at the youth center, pouring my heart into helping them find their voice, just as I'd done with Rosie when she'd shyly read her first book aloud. Now I'd create something bigger, a community art program for kids in Rosie's name. It would be a place for them to draw, paint, write, whatever helped them heal or dream. I typed out ideas, free workshops, supplies donated by local businesses, a gallery night to showcase their work. I pictured kids like Rosie, bright but struggling, finding joy in a pencil or a brush, their creations celebrated, not dismissed. My phone buzzed. Jen, texting a photo of the butterfly cake she'd made for Rosie's 5th birthday. "Found this. Let's do something for her, Carly." I smiled, my throat tight, and replied, "Already on it, art program in her name." Jen's response was instant. "Yes, I'm in, whatever you need." Her support, so different from my family's coldness, fueled me. I called the youth center's director, Maria, my voice steady as I pitched the idea. A program for kids named after my daughter, Rosie. Art-based, free, focused on healing. Maria didn't hesitate. "Carly, that's beautiful. Let's make it happen." We set a meeting for next week to plan, her enthusiasm a spark that kept mine burning. I stood, stretching, and walked to the window, looking out at the city's hum. My apartment felt different now. Safer, mine. The locks were changed, my family's access cut off, but this was more than closing doors, it was opening new ones. I returned to the floor, picking up Rosie's garden sketch, and taped it to the wall above my desk. It was the first piece in what would be her legacy. A program, a space, a way for kids to feel seen, the way she always deserved to be. My family had tried to erase her, but I'd make sure her name shone brighter than their cruelty. I opened my notes app, adding 3:47 p.m., started Rosie's art program plan, meeting with Maria next week. Each step felt like reclaiming ground, not just from my family, but from the grief that had threatened to swallow me. Rosie's memory wasn't in that ruined dress, it was in me, in what I'd build. My family's name, their legacy of dismissal, meant nothing now. I was creating my own in Rosie's honor, and no one could take that away. The evening light softened the edges of my apartment, casting a warm glow over Rosie's sketch on the wall, its crayon flowers vibrant against the white paint. My laptop was open, the draft of Rosie's art program plan glowing on the screen, with notes from Maria about potential donors and a venue at the youth center. The new deadbolt gleamed on my door, Sarah's cease and desist letter was finalized, and my therapy session with Ellen had left me with a mantra: "You are enough." The barbecue, Melanie's theft of Rosie's dress, my family's betrayal, it all felt distant now, like a storm that had passed. Sitting on my couch, a cup of chamomile tea in my hands, I reflected on the journey from that night to this moment. My worth wasn't tied to their approval, it was mine, rooted in my love for Rosie and the life I was building. I'd found peace, not in their absence, but in my own strength. I sipped my tea, the steam curling upward, and thought back to the days after Rosie's death, when grief was a weight I carried alone. My family's dismissal, Mom's "move on," Dad's silence, Melanie's selfishness, had made me feel invisible, my pain a burden. I'd spent so long trying to fit their mold, to be the good daughter who showed up, who forgave. But that night at the barbecue, watching them mock Rosie's memory, I saw them for who they were. People who'd never truly seen me. Cutting them out wasn't just about anger, it was about choosing myself, choosing Rosie's legacy over their toxicity. I set the mug down, my fingers brushing the photo of Rosie on my coffee table, her daisy crown, her gap-toothed grin. I used to think peace meant their approval, their understanding. But sitting here, surrounded by her things, by plans for her art program, I realized peace was internal. It was in the way I'd stood up to them, voice steady, calling out their hypocrisy. It was in the locks I'd changed, the boundaries I'd set, the program I'd started. I didn't need their validation, I had my own. Rosie's love, her light, lived in me. And no one could take that away. I opened my notes app one last time, typing 6:32 p.m. I'm enough, Rosie's enough. We don't need them. Closing the app, I felt a quiet release, like letting go of a breath I'd held too long. My family's shadow was gone, and in its place was a life I was building, one where Rosie's memory thrived, where I thrived. I leaned back, the couch soft beneath me, and for the first time in months, I felt still, whole, free. Have you ever had to walk away from people who couldn't see your worth? I'm Carly, and I've learned that family isn't always the one you're born into. It's the one you choose, the one that honors your heart. My journey through grief, betrayal, and reclaiming Rosie's memory taught me that my value doesn't come from others' approval, it comes from within. If this story hit home, please share your own in the comments. I'd love to hear how you've stood up for yourself or someone you love. If my journey resonated, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know it's okay to define their own worth. You are enough, just as you are, and you don't need anyone's permission to shine.